those down. I want to scare the kids.
Far Cry New Dawn puts a post-apocalyptic twist on the Far Cry formula, and the result seems to be something that's both quite familiar and surprisingly distinct from the previous games in the series. Here are 4 things that stood out to us after our recent hands-on. Outside of original Xbox exclusives Far Cry Instincts and Far Cry Instincts Evolution, Far Cry games have always been standalone stories. Ubisoft has certainly previously hinted at links between various other games in the series via the regular Hurt cameos and the occasional Easter egg, but Far Cry New Dawn is the first time a numbered Far Cry game has received a direct sequel. It may be titled like a spin-off, but Far Cry New Dawn is a genuine sequel story picking up 17 years after the apocalyptic finale of Far Cry 5. What this means is that the story of Hope County, Montana isn't over yet, and instead of having to close the book on Hope County's colourful cast, it's allowing Ubisoft to bring back a batch of familiar characters, like Pastor Jerome, Grace Armstrong, and Kim Rye. Far Cry New Dawn even brings back Kim and Nick Rye's daughter, who was born during the events of Far Cry 5. Returning players may remember her birth in the side mission Special Delivery. New Dawn even brings back Joseph Seed. Considering how central unforgettable foes are to the Far Cry brand, it'll be interesting to see a returning antagonist share the air with not 1 but 2 new villains.
The only currency in this world is power.
At first glance, nuking the planet and sending Far Cry into a radiation-ravaged near future may seem like the most significant transformation here, but in reality, Far Cry's brand is just as home in the post-apocalypse as it is anywhere else. The Far Cry shtick, a lone hero arrives in a lawless frontier and works with the locals to seize the power back from their oppressors, is still present and accounted for, no problem there. No, the most seismic shift here in New Dawn is the game's hearty embrace of various RPG systems. Enemies and wildlife now boast health bars and difficulty tiers, and attacks now cause damage numbers to spew out of your targets. It's a pretty weird aesthetic to become accustomed to in a Far Cry game, but the look of it is one thing, the impact of it is another. If you're not a fan of having numerals pumping out of your targets like a leaky bag, you can turn that stuff off, but it doesn't really change what's going on under the surface. As a result, Far Cry New Dawn seems packed with these spongy sorts of enemies. The kind that can absorb about 11 billion bullets to the face because they're arbitrarily too strong for your entry-level hardware. It's pretty surprising for a Far Cry game to pivot this way. It will be interesting to see how many fans will be on board with these overtly gamey changes, especially those fancying a return to the boosted realism of, say, Far Cry 2. Considering Far Cry New Dawn takes place in an upcycled version of Far Cry 5's Hope County, New Dawn's new expeditions are a clever way of getting players into some new and novel locations for some action. New Dawn's Hope County has been heavily overhauled from its pre-nuclear war state, but these expeditions will provide some properly fresh backdrops. The expedition we tried took us to a British aircraft carrier, which has presumably been rusting on the shores of North America since the collapse of society. Think of expeditions like Far Cry 5's arcade mode, but without the homemade map editor feel. They still function as a part of New Dawn's loot loop, however, which involves gathering as much ethanol as you can in order to upgrade your home base, and cobble together some weapons that'll fire bullets that won't just bounce off a cranky bear. Who said the aftermath of an apocalypse has to be drab? While other upcoming shooters like Metro Exodus and The Division 2 paint their landscapes from palettes of mostly brown and beige, Far Cry New Dawn is awash with vibrant colour thanks to a super bloom, a natural phenomenon that sees an explosion of wildflowers spring from an otherwise barren earth. It's not just the plant life though, since everything from armour to architecture seems to have been coated in the kind of eye-catching pinks, blues and yellows that typically brighten up a bag of licorice allsorts. Oddly enough, the upcoming Rage 2 seems to have taken a very similar hypercolour approach to its aesthetic, contrasting hot pink neon with browning metal like zinc cream on a lifeguard's lips. So which Armageddon-based open-world shooter sequel will be the most eye-dazzlingly fabulous? That remains to be seen. Far Cry New Dawn is out on February 15 alongside roughly every other game, I think. Until then, watch us take out an outpost on 3 difficulty levels and rescue a dog in 4K.